Welcome to Mindful Moments. Nourish your mind on the go. This video uses AI narration to present our original book analysis.
And today, today we're diving deep into the world of Holden Caulfield and J.D. Salinger's The Catcher in the Rye, a book that sparked conversations for generations.
Okay, so for anyone who hasn't cracked open this classic, we've got Holden Caulfield, this teenager who gets the boot from his fancy prep school right before Christmas break.
Yeah.
But let's be real, he wasn't exactly thriving there anyway. He's got this intense aversion to what he calls the phoniness of the adult world.
It's not just a teenage rebellion thing, though. Holden's sharp observations often pinpoint the hypocrisy and superficiality that can permeate adult life. He sees how people put on these facades, and it deeply bothers him.
Yeah, and it's everywhere he looks. His classmates, like Stradlater, for example, Holden can't stand how casually cruel Stradlater is, especially towards girls.
That really highlights Holden's own sensitivity, and perhaps his idealized view of innocence. He even tries to connect with girls himself, like his date with Sally Hayes, but those attempts just crash and burn, leaving him even more isolated.
And who could forget his awkward encounter with Sunny the prostitute? He ends up just wanting to talk, which I think reveals a lot about his longing for genuine connection.
Absolutely. But his inability to navigate those interactions just underscores his profound sense of alienation. He doesn't fit in with his peers, can't seem to connect with adults, and even his attempts at rebellion backfire.
It's like he's constantly searching for authenticity but can't seem to find it anywhere. And then there's the underlying tragedy that colors his entire outlook, the death of his younger brother, Allie.
That loss is clearly a defining moment for Holden. He idealizes Allie, representing the innocence he fears losing as he gets older. It's this fear that fuels his cynical view of the world.
Which brings us to those ducks in Central Park, right? Holden's fixation on them, wondering where they go in the winter. It's almost a metaphor for his own search for a safe haven. He's desperately seeking something permanent and unchanging in a world that feels chaotic and unpredictable.
What's interesting is that Holden seems to perceive adulthood as this inevitable fall from grace. He's clinging to the past, to the memory of Allie and the simplicity of childhood, as a way to avoid confronting the complexities of growing up.
It's like he's stuck in this in-between space. Too young to be an adult, but too jaded to be a child. And then there's his relationship with Phoebe, his younger sister.
She's such a fascinating character. Holden absolutely adores her, sees her as this pure, uncorrupted soul. He even tries to protect her from what he sees as the dangers of adulthood.
You remember how he creates that whole Catcher in the Rye fantasy? That misinterpretation of the Robert Burns poem? He wants to save children from falling into the abyss of adulthood just like he wants to save Phoebe.
And that speaks volumes about his own internal struggles. He's trying to protect Phoebe, but in many ways, he's trying to protect the part of himself that still yearns for innocence, on authenticity.
It's like he's projecting his own fears and anxieties onto her. It's all tied to this larger theme of identity, right? Holden's been kicked out of multiple schools, can't seem to find his footing, and he's constantly trying on different personas, like that red hunting hat he wears.
The hat is such a powerful symbol. It represents his desire to stand out, to be different from the phonies he encounters. But it also highlights his isolation, his inability to truly belong.
He's desperately searching for something to define himself, a place where he feels like he fits in. But his cynicism and his fear of the adult world keep him from truly connecting with others.
And that's what makes The Catcher in the Rye so compelling. It captures that universal feeling of adolescent angst, the confusion and uncertainty of trying to figure out who you are in a world that often feels phony and superficial.
It's a book that stays with you long after you finish it, and it definitely sparks some interesting conversations.
Absolutely. It prompts us to question our own definitions of authenticity and to consider how societal pressures shape our perceptions of the world.
And maybe even to reflect on those times in our own lives when we felt like Holden, lost and searching for something real.
Because even amidst all that alienation and cynicism, there's a glimmer of hope in Holden's story.
Right. A longing for connection that suggests even the most cynical among us still yearn for something genuine.
And that brings us to perhaps one of the most crucial elements in The Catcher in the Rye, the ending.
It's definitely one that leaves readers pondering. You got Holden watching Phoebe on the carousel, and for a moment he seemed to find a sense of peace.
It's a powerful image, isn't it? That sense of childlike joy. The simple beauty of the moment. It contrasts sharply with Holden's usual cynicism.
It's like he's finally allowing himself to be present, to let go of his anxieties and just experience something pure and innocent.
But Salinger doesn't make it easy for us. The ending remains intentionally ambiguous. We don't know for sure what happens to Holden after this. Does he hold on to that glimmer of hope? Or does he slip back into despair?
It's left open to interpretation, which I think adds to the book's impact. It forces us to consider the possibilities, to grapple with the uncertainty of Holden's future.
It's almost as if Salinger is saying that growing up isn't a simple linear process. There will be moments of joy and connection, but also moments of confusion and alienation. It's a constant negotiation between holding on to innocence and facing the realities of the adult world.
And that's what makes The Catcher in the Rye so relatable even decades later. It captures the complexities of adolescence, the feeling of being caught between two worlds, and the search for meaning and belonging that we all experience at some point.
It reminds us that even in the midst of feeling lost and alone, there's always the potential for connection and hope. Those moments on the carousel, those glimpses of beauty and authenticity, they exist even in the darkest of times.
And perhaps that's what Holden ultimately discovers. Not a grand solution to his problems, but a recognition that even in a world he perceives as phony, there are moments of genuine connection and simple beauty worth cherishing.
Moments that remind us of the importance of empathy and understanding, especially for those who are struggling to find their place in the world.
The Catcher in the Rye is a book that encourages us to look beyond the surface, to challenge our assumptions, and to find those sparks of hope and humanity even in the most unexpected places.
It's a book that invites us to step into Holden's world, to see the world through his eyes, and to question our own perceptions of authenticity and connection.
And it's a book that has resonated with readers for decades, sparking countless interpretations and discussions. I think that speaks to the power of Salinger's writing, his ability to tap into those universal experiences of adolescence and the search for meaning.
He captures that raw, unfiltered voice of Holden Caulfield so brilliantly, making him a character we can't help but empathize with, even when he's being
frustrating or cynical. Right. He's flawed. He's struggling. But he's also deeply human. And I think that's why The Catcher in the Rye continues to be relevant. It reminds us that even in a world that can feel overwhelming and phony, there's still beauty to be found, connections to be made, and hope to be held on to.
If you haven't already experienced this literary classic, we highly recommend giving it a read. It's a journey into the heart of adolescence, a story that will stay with you long after you turn the final page.
And if it's been a while since you last visited Holden Caulfield's world, perhaps it's time for a reread. You might be surprised by the new layers of meaning you discover.
You can find a link to purchase the book in the description below.
And don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more deep dives into the world of literature and ideas. We're constantly exploring new worlds and sharing our insights here on Mindful Moments. Until next time, keep nourishing your mind on the go.